Hello everyone and welcome to the Social Reset panel. As we begin the session, we've got so many people joining in. Please use the chat facility to say hi. We've got 1,200 registrations joining Systems Week and all coming in and zooming in from all different parts of the world. So please say hi and say where you are. My name is Baljeet Sandhu. I work at the Centre for Knowledge Equity, and we are delighted to be partnering with our friends at the Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship at Side Business School to co-design and host this really timely, bold and what we're calling a field forwarding event, really, to bring together systems thinkers from all around the world to reimagine more equitable systems. It's been a real honour and privilege to bring our work on knowledge equity to the Skoll Centre, and a huge thank you to Peter, Zainab and Jess and everyone else at the Skoll team, but also to Dean Peter Tefano and the faculty at Side Business School for welcoming, embracing what is a challenging provocation to our knowledge production systems, and many of the faculty who've led and moderated some of our sessions this week, which has been brilliant, including Bridget, Mark and Mariah. So from my experience of just coming into beautiful spaces, I mean, what an amazing, humbling and hopeful week it has been, full of visual recordings and artwork, videos introducing key concepts around systems change, knowledge equity and resourcing systems change, daily provocation videos that have been truly inspiring and heartwarming, powerful share fairs which have been open discussions about the challenges, successes and failures from systems thinkers, practitioners and educators, you know, exploring the power of community mobilisation, how we can teach, learn, support and measure systems change, and also 4 panel discussions with academics, researchers, practitioners, students and leading experts, organised around the 4 systems reset themes of the Skoll Centre, including climate, where we explored alternative narratives around our relationship to the environment and to each other, based on different sources of knowledge and wisdom, including indigenous knowledge and what wisdom that offers. Economic reset, exploring how the pandemic exacerbated existing inequality in the workplace, home and community, and how through an intersectional lens and through an intersectional view of the economic impact of the pandemic, we can start to build a more inclusive and equitable economy for all. And then and the most recent one was the health reset panel around health futurism, how we can radically reimagine health systems in the wake of COVID-19 and beyond. And we would really like to welcome you to the final panel event of the week, on the which is the social reset, titled Knowledge Equity, Making Systems Change Powerful. Before we begin, and what I hope will be a powerful 90-minute knowledge exchange, I wanted to share a few details about the session and the community space and some housekeeping rules. This session will be recorded and available live shortly on the Centre's YouTube channels. As part of the panel, we'll be joined by Zahora Plummer, an incredible illustrator who will be live scribing today's session to capture the key ideas we discussed today, and we will leave a few minutes at the end of the session for Zahora to really share back what she has created, and trust me, there are some beautiful images. And last but not least, knowledge equity in practice is underpinned by the principle of knowledge exchanges for dialogue. We want you to all be part of the discussion today. No one has the answer, but with knowledge, dialogue and exchange, we can connect and elevate our individual and collective understanding. And our incredible panelists will always say that we're probably going to learn so much from you. So please do get engaged with the conversation. Please feel free to share your thoughts, comments, and even questions in the chat as we walk through discussions. But this is the social reset panel, right? So we will be flowing through very different themes, areas, concepts, through various vantage points, and we want to bring you with us on that flow. So just to give you kind of a grounding of how this may go, but I don't know, but we'll just see how it goes and be quite organic with the conversation. But we're going to really first explore this thing called systems change, right? The relationship between systems actors and systemic problems. And then the resistance to incumbent systems and inequitable power dynamics. What paradigmatic shifts are necessary to better understand our social systems, to reimagine a new way forward. So please feel free to throw comments, challenges in the chat. And we are also intentionally, our incredible panelists will focus their systems change discussions through their own practice and positionality as systems practitioners. And that's largely often going to be a UK context. So please feel free to use the space to share your own examples, global differences, similarities, challenges, provocations, which will enrich all of our work. Because we're all going to be on a constant learning journey. And our wonderful colleagues at the Skoll Centre will be capturing those exchanges in real time and sharing them with us. So now that's enough for me, but without further ado, I would like to introduce you to an incredible panel of dear friends, colleagues, and incredible systems practitioners who are so highly respected in the UK, Maria, Darshan and Derek. And they are also our centre's inaugural Knowledge Equity Fellows. The Knowledge Equity Fellowship was launched during the pandemic to bring incredible systems practitioners who have long been boldly activating their lived and also integrating it with their lived, learned and practice expertise to really disrupt and reimagine systems. Practitioners who have been part of the broader lived experience leaders movement across the UK, which launched several years ago, and systems practitioners who have long been part of the imagination work that led to the co-creation of the movement, but also the Centre for Knowledge Equity. They've really highly respected by peers in the movement, not only for their values and wisdom and courage to work across and within multiplicity of systems, but also alongside incredible social movements and activist groups in the UK. And so first, Maria Adebowale-Schwarte. Maria is a city and urban placemaking strategist who focuses on collaborative design, policy and philanthropic models that are inclusive and equitable. She's the CEO of the Foundation for Future London, opening opportunities for diverse people, places and partners at East Bank, London's new arts, culture and innovation quarter in the heart of East London. She believes that fundamentals of an inclusive city are co-design and funding that is shaped by inclusive social, economic and environmental principles. Maria started her career as an environmental justice and is the founder of the award-winning inclusive placemaking consultancy Living Space Project. She has written articles for numerous journals, including the Royal Society of Architects, Academy of Urbanism, and also the United Nations for Human Rights Commission and the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development. She's also the author of an incredible book, and I would highly recommend it, called The Placemaking Factor, a catalyst for disrupting environment and social grant making, which really does explore the role of centred philanthropy in unlocking siloed approaches to funding. And she acts, I mean, I could go on, she acts as an advisor not only to our communities, but to a lot of systems actors, from private and public sector organisations through to funders, and she's also the co-chair of the Mayor of London's Sustainability Development Commission. And it's just an absolute honour to have you with us, Maria. And now I'm going to turn to Derek A. Bardowell. Derek is a writer, philanthropy advisor and former youth worker who argues for the centrality of racial justice in the funding sector. He started his journalism career in 1994. He's written for The Times, The Guardian and British GQ, contributed to anthologies such as A Companion to Contemporary Black British Culture, and appears regularly on BBC Radio. Derek moved into the not-for-profit sector, where he directed award-winning programmes for the Stephen Lauren Trust since 2009. He's led funding portfolios for funders and has been responsible for redistributing over £150 million to good causes across 34 countries. Derek is also an incredible author. Another book I would highly recommend, which it honestly did bring tears to my own eyes from my own lived experiences with my family and also a migrant family, was his book called No Win, No Race. It tackled race and racism in modern Britain through sport. It was a Sunday Times and Financial Times Book of the Year. Derek is also currently the CEO of 10 Years Time and working now on a new book titled Outsiders Within, which reimagines philanthropy. He also hosts a podcast, Just Cause, exploring the intersections of race, culture and social justice. And he's also the founding member of a really radical new kind of community and an activist group called Future Foundations UK, which supports minoritised racial groups who work in philanthropy in the UK to connect and lead change. And last but no means least, Darshan Sanghrajka. Darshan is the founder of Super Being Labs. He has 14 years of experience using design, creativity, and tech for good to help tackle complex social problems, working with partners like Action for Children, Breast Cancer Now, PAST, and many more, through working on multiple impact careers, systems for young people, systems for issues today, and systems for the arts. Super Being Labs is on a mission to design a world that truly enables the best of human potential. All of this has come from his melding of his lived, learned, practice and technical expertise. He believes we are all born as super beings, imaginative, creative, curious, funny and kind to each other. But over time, those powers get dulled or taken away because the systems we live in cause people to be lost, hurt, divided or manipulated, especially at a time where the relentless pace of social media accelerates that path. In doing his work, he has dedicated time to supporting a lot of social movements that advance social justice and democracy, especially where they intersect with the digital world. When not at Super Being Labs, he's also the co-founder of Being Mankind, a project that uses storytelling to help inspire boys to shun damaging gender stereotypes and how we can grow into kind, compassionate and empathetic human beings, everything that will render the terms like man up redundant. And outside of his work, and when he gets time, he performs stand-up comedy. So I know that was really long introductions, but we're talking about social reset. And I really wanted to give you a breadth of just all the incredible expertise of this incredible panel. And it's just wonderful to have you with us. So let's dive in, folks. So the issues of poverty, inequality and racial justice and climate change have never been more pressing and arguably paralysing for many. But the pandemic has also demonstrated the precarity, but also the possibilities of our social systems. And you've all had experience of working within and across industries, including government, private and public sector organisations, investors, funders and social movements. But systems change can still feel quite abstract for many. And even though it's widely used, what does it really mean? You know, how is systems change done in practice? And how are social purpose organisations working to overcome the worldwide legacies of oppression and global systems like colonialism, racism, inequality, globalization, climate and health, injustice and inequities. And so throughout the week, we have heard from many of our systems thinkers that environment, economic, health and social systems are interconnected and interdependent. But what does that really mean? And so that's why I wanted to really turn to all of you into, and then just really start the conversation flow is what, through your own work, how have you seen various systems play out in reality? What does it mean? Can you share any wisdom with us about the relationships between different systems actors and systemic problems? And also, I would love you to share some assumptions you would like to reveal or debunk that can often be left unexplored through the current research in this field. And so with that, I wanted to turn to Maria. What wisdom would you like to share from your practice and vantage point?
I think, as you said, Baljeet, everything is connected. And I kind of started off my career in human rights and environmental justice. And it struck me that actually the conversation around environment is a conversation around people and place. And everyone will be hearing this thing called placemaking, urbanization. But when you think about it, if you want to kind of take away the academics of place and what does it mean and who's involved in it, the biggest place we live in is the planet. And we need to look at the way in which we have shared narratives around environment and climate change and who we are as human beings and how we treat each other. And I think one of the ways that you see very early on, certainly as a child, is the place that you live in and the place that other people live in and the resources you have and the resources others don't or do. And I think it's almost like systems change is doing a little bit of that thing that young kids do, is sitting back and just reflecting and asking questions and being allowed to do that. I think in an increasingly urbanized world, we do need to think as well around the whole conversation around place into the future. Most of us, when we're talking about environment, or at least it's assumed that when we're talking about environment, we're only talking about green spaces. Now, I don't mean only, but when we talk about climate change. It's really crucial. This is absolutely crucial to our well-being and the planet. But it's so much more than that. And the problem sometimes around that language is that it actually shuts people out, because what they hear is climate. They don't hear, actually, we are talking about the place you live in. And we're talking about what the world looks like in the future and how do we protect the biggest place of all, but also local to global. So this conversation around climate change is right, but let's look at the sort of intersections of that. And so, you know, most of the world, whether we like it or not, will be urbanized. What is it, 2050, 70%, probably more actually, will be urbanized, cities and towns. So how do we figure out this conversation around climate and environment in regards to urbanization? I mean, I'm sitting here in a room in London, and we're looking at what, 11 million people in London in 2050? I mean, go figure. Do we have enough parks? Do we have the right designed houses? Do people have space? Are we still designing houses that are only for 2 people when actually we have multi-generational families that need bigger houses? Who's been involved in the conversation around how environmental and placemaking, or regeneration as we like to call it sometimes, is actually designed? Who gets to do it? So I'm also looking back about what's the systems change. One of it is unlocking the people involved in that decision making and policy making behind the places that we live in, not just the environment, that's absolutely crucial too, but also if you look at architecture, for example, architects and planners have a massive impact on the world we live in the way that they design a place, in the way that they think through it, whether or not they involve knowledge equity, or whether it's just about filling spaces with blocks that are made out of bricks. And if you look at it across the world, and in England as well, the smallest percentage of diverse people are getting into the architecture. And the reason why, because it's about 7 years long to do that particular career, and it's bloody expensive. So it's how do we democratize the environment, the conversation around it? How do we democratize the conversation around climate change? And then how do we democratize actually how we build a space and a better place to live in, local to global? I could go on forever, but I think maybe my colleagues want to come in there.
Oh, Maria, no, thank you so much. I mean, we were diving straight in, folks. And that's really it. I mean, that's what I was hoping we could start to unpack, and especially for everyone joining us, is, you know, this notion of who are we seeing as systems actors and how they connect and have relationships together, and your discussion around the planners and the architects. And with that, Darshan, I wanted to turn to you, because I know you've been part of many partnerships and collaborations between public and private sector organisations. What does systems change mean from this vantage point, and what are the assumptions that you may want to debunk or reveal?
Thanks, Baljeet. Maria, I'm still trying to imagine the central line with 11 million people on it. for anyone not from London, central line doesn't work, and it's like the major thing that goes all the way through London, and so 11 million people. It's almost like this, that leads me kind of onto this whole idea of kind of systems actors, system change. It almost, as we all know, the system is designed to do what it does, right? And when there are things that are wrong, someone somewhere has decided it's okay for that to be wrong. And so you get all these systems actors, or they're not even systems, they're people working in nodes of the system, trying to either clean up, fix up, do something, change something, empower someone, inspire someone. And in their own way, they are all doing incredible things. But someone somewhere is essentially created a system that means that none of those people can be organized enough for all of those things to add up and to smash through the problem. Even if you take things like global healthcare, right? Why is it that cancer charities are responsible for effectively saving lives? If every government got together and gave cancer research the same equity as space race, for example, or war, we would be in a different situation. And you're seeing that happen, where you've got people like Derek and Maria doing these incredible things, and everyone else that's been on this week. Then you've got government making policy that effectively is trying to shut that down, that change down. And that's the thing that we've really got to get a handle on, is that the system knows where it's failing, and it wants that to keep happening, right? And that's the reality, is like, you know, we don't have government saying, let's organize around these systems actors and work with them. And that's the thing, bold countries think differently and do things differently. In New Zealand, for example, the idea that if you are a survivor of domestic violence, then there needs to be some sort of public benefit that allows you to escape that situation. In the UK, you can barely even get prosecution, right? And so what's happening is all across the world, you're getting these situations where governments becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, with the idea that we can create a system as a government through policy that effectively creates fractured systems everywhere, but someone else will go and fix that. And every so often that someone else will have to write a report to get funding. And every 3 years that someone has to stop doing what they're doing because they can't continue the funding. And you know what? You create this conveyor belt. So you keep everyone busy and tired, and the system does what it's supposed to do. It protects the power at the top. So for me, it's like, until we find a way of organizing systems actors into a way where their work can cross-connect and effectively be a vehicle that is more powerful than an organizing force, which is government, or is able to influence an organizing force such as a government, then we are going to have what is the equivalent of projects and not system change, right? And that's where I'm coming from, is like, how do we create that organizing principle? Funders need to step up. Funders need to stop funding projects. They need to fund people and fund them in a way that says, you know what? Nobody has answers to everything, but certain people have knowledge because they've been through it and they know what they're saying is going to work. You've got to back them. And it might take 10 years, but it's better that person spending 10 years of funding trying than that person spending 10 years of not getting funded and then giving up. Because I tell you what, once all these system actors burn out, who have we got left? That's where I'm at.
Darsh, no, thank you so much for sharing that and just the realness of what you've shared, because I think often we can have these abstract terms, you know, even, you know, the amount of times that our centre and others are contacted by private and public sector organisations, let alone charities and others who are far behind this kind of wanting to learn about systems change, to really actually do training on systems change, you know, and it's just like another tick box exercise. And then there's often discussions around systems actors like those who do hold power, and we'll talk about that a little later, but who are these larger organisations who may be the resource holders, whereas an assumption that they are thinking about systems. And what you've started to really unpack there is this notion of, are they really caring about systems change?
No, I just quickly, before Derek steps in, I think just to remember, you know, I've been in situations where social entrepreneurs, for example, are working on disability rights. But for them, their work to actually work, they can do everything perfectly. But that person has to deal with, in the UK, this is just the UK example, because obviously I know it's a global audience, but that person has to work with the benefit system in the UK. That benefit system is not nuanced. It's pretty much a computer says no or yes. So that intervention that is helping someone, supporting them, suddenly can become a really bad thing for them because it could penalize them here. So when I've been in situations where I've said to certain funders, if you're funding this program, you need to also petition government to change policy. And so, for example, could you create a vehicle where these systems actors could work through this kind of sandbox where they could work without all those without the situation being entrenched? So they could have literally a pass to be like, we're putting 100 people through this program. Can you give them literally a pass to mean that they don't get hounded by DWP, Department for Work and Pensions? No, we can't do that because the government funds us and we don't want to rock the boat. So really, it's not just whether the government wants to change, it's actually the funding mechanism that's sort of saying, we know we need to do this, but we can't do that bit, so let's not go for it. And at the end of the 3 years, they'll write a report and say it didn't really work. But we knew on day one why it wouldn't work. So
thank you, Dash. And it's so and so that kind of interconnectedness point around systems and systems actors, but also then the systemic problems that then morph, and then the cross marginalization in effect that starts to happen of people trying to access support as well. But this notion of kind of, you know, we often have these terms in the systems thinking and practice around, say, complexity of systems, but also this notion of systems being uncertain and uncertainty. But a lot of the leaders, and I know we've had some incredible conversations amongst ourselves, but with other systems practitioners who have direct lived experience of social and inequitable systems and social injustices, who would simply have said this, you know, if your life is oppressed by a system, you are forced to live under the control of a system, trust me, there's something certain about it. And so with that, I wanted to turn to you, Derek, and if you could just share some of your wisdom from your vantage point, but really focusing on are there truly some uncertain things about systems that we are often making assumptions about, or are there actually some very, very, very designed parts of the systems that many practitioners, but also lived experience leaders and practitioners have long understood in a very sophisticated way?
Thanks, Baljeet. I guess I always come to, if you're looking at charities, then the kind of perverse role of charities is that growth is based on pain. And if that's your system, then your system's fundamentally flawed and wrong. You know, I cannot talk about systems change without really speaking on culture and power, you know, because ultimately, if you're not talking about culture and power, then, you know, none of your system's actually going to change. And we've seen that over the last 12 to 18 months through the pandemic and after the lynching of George Floyd. What happened in the last 12 months is, and you got to premise this with the fact that, you know, Britain is a country that is obsessed with statues and status. You know, that's in the DNA of the country. So that means it's going to be in the DNA of philanthropy. So if we're talking about a legitimate shift in power and culture, we're talking about grounding the work in the knowledge and expertise of the most impacted communities. We're talking about taking a reparatory lens in the work we do. We're talking about decolonizing our systems and structures. We're talking about understanding fundamentally the intersections of our struggles and our collective struggles as communities. We're talking about a system where we place the values and the behaviors and our beliefs to be more powerful than the legacies of the institutions that have been created. You know, that's what you're talking in terms of systems change, because you're talking about breaking the culture and the power. But what we saw through the last 12 to 18 months was a system where certain things were done in terms of funding, which lots of funders said that they couldn't traditionally do. So we saw a few things where they some more unrestricted funding, more longer term funding, you know, more Black and Brown led groups were funded. So a lot of things kind of changed in that sense. But ultimately, a lot of that was really performative, and a lot of that stuff was very marginalized, right? So it was like, well, we're going to throw, you know, £1 million to Black and Brown people. Cool. That might be like whatever minor percentage of the funding that we give out totally, and it's going to be a time limited fund. And the thing that always struck me is that through all this process where we're saying that when you're talking about the disparities in society, housing, health, COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's Black and Brown communities, it's the marginalized communities that get hit the most. The data came out and it showed that, right? So we're talking all of these years. Lots of people will say we're not investing in certain communities and stuff because we don't have the evidence, we don't have the data. Last year, we have the evidence, we have the data, it was plain in front of people. And still, the conversation was very much around race as being this thing that is to the side. It's this thing that is, it's a theme, and it's a bit like if you go on your iTunes store, right? You know, you go into your iTunes store, and as you go on, you see your genres. You get your rock, and you get your pop, and you get your hip hop, right? And it's like, well, I'm not even sure that race was treated as a genre. It's treated as a kind of subgenre of a genre of a genre, you know, so it was just kind of out. And it's like you're sitting there having conversations with people talking about environment, and they're talking about health, and they're talking about all of these things that are all interconnected. And when you talk about race, they talk about it as if it's something that separates all of those things. they talk about it as if it's like drill or trap music. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we are music. You know, we are music. We are the foundation. This is centralized. This isn't a subgenre of this stuff. And so for me, the bit that was, and people would have heard me speak on this so much over the last 12 to 18 months, is that this is personal. You know, it's like, yo, I can put a suit on and I can do these talks and, you know, be sophisticated if people want me to be sophisticated, but I'm in here because it's personal. You know, I'm in here because at various points in my life or my career and stuff, I have been on that other side. And when you are on that other side and you get that privilege and power to be in a position to give away money, and you see where that money has been wasted, when you see innovation, right? And I say innovation in our communities where other people can only see pain in our communities, then of course you get angry, you know, because you're sitting there and you're saying, and I say this as a former youth worker, and anyone that's been a youth worker or worked in any service can probably see that enjoyed that work, and I love doing it, can see the faces, know the stories of many of the young people that they worked with. And when you see those changes with minimal resources, you believe in change. When you've seen it, when you've sniffed it, when you've been anywhere close to it, you absolutely believe that it can be possible. And then you go into a framework of philanthropy where fundamentally people talk about systems change. They theorize about systems change, but they don't really believe it. Mm-hmm. They really don't believe it. Or the only thing that they can see is their own frame around systems change. So in terms of the innovation that lies within our communities, there's tons of it, but it will only get funded until many people that are on the other side of the fence can either understand it and frame it so they can own it and erase it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's how we've seen it. And the reason why I say this and the evidence I have for this is because, yo, I've been in the rooms where that's happened. Mm-hmm. I've seen that and I've witnessed that. I've witnessed stuff where I'm sitting there and I'm saying, this is remarkable stuff. And I know later on we're going to get into this, of like really good examples of good practice, of stuff that has been over scrutinized, has been funded, if it's been funded at all, has been funded 5, 6 or 7 or 8 years later. It's always funded on the basis of those with the power to own it, and only when it's on their own terms. And if we want to erase that, if we want true systems change, then we absolutely have to reverse the power and the culture of philanthropy. But as I said, to do that, you are fundamentally having to do that for British society, and that's very tough.
No, there's so much there, so much. And then, you know, all just even connecting in all the discussions about this notion of innovation, Derek, you know, because I think that, as you say, this notion of seeing people's pain and those on the hard edge of social and economic injustice as being recipients of services and interventions has been a long-standing discussion in the international development space, you know, the saviour complex kind of lens. But I think that what's been really interesting from the years of work that we've been doing with system actors in the North, in Europe and the North Americas, is that same saviour complex lens, it is here in our own countries. Our belief that those on the hard edge of social injustice need our services. We do know that we actually need their knowledge. We do know that we actually need to understand their problems, and it's focused on understanding problems. And when we started our research and understanding, you know, how are we understanding not communities as vulnerable identities, but those who've moved away from the story of self, and who are actually also wanting and participating in creating change, you know, activating the insights of their life, often integrating it with their practice experience, say, of youth work or other mediums for change, to actually really start to think about systemic change. But then what we found with all the research we were doing is, okay, we know that we need that knowledge, you know, in the philanthropic sector, in all spaces, We haven't really shifted. We're finding it very difficult to shift from a civic engagement, social action and participation model. So we were really, pre-pandemic, we were still in focus group fodder mode. You know, fast forward, human-centered design, predetermined one-off consultative events and processes to get the thoughts of communities we purport to serve. And that's truly where we were still at in the North. And so that shift of the debate, and why we brought this work and coined the term knowledge equity through years of research in the innovation space, in the systems change space, because this is really what it's about, is innovation. That necessity is the mother of innovation. We have incredible systems actors trying to understand the problems, the systemic issues, the systemic problems. Well, we've got a whole heap of system actors who can't even divorce themselves from the problem. What they want is to have equitable agency to be part of designing and being part of thinking about how we create systemic change. And I was more than anyone surprised that this notion of lived experience and lived experience leadership was actually embraced wholeheartedly by business schools, first at the Yale School of Management, and now even at Side Business School as well. Is, you know, let's think about it like this. We are stifling human ingenuity, you know, the ability to craft new ideas. And the fact that we are, you know, and even just simple frames like, we wish the man who invented the wheel had a business degree and an engineering degree. Right, so the inequity in who we treat as knowledge producers because they don't have the CVs and the credentials, but actually who do have vital wisdom. So thank you for kind of just surfacing that notion of innovation as well, because I think that's, you know, human history illuminates the power of people using their direct first-hand experience of socioeconomic injustice to drive change. And that's why we are actually where we are as humankind. I mean, there's all the social movements. I wish the women's rights movement was started by men, you know, it's beyond that. Let's talk about services, designing interventions, new radical innovations as well. And how do we move forward with that? But for some reason we were stuck with the pandemic. There seems to be a real revealing. But I think we still, I know we've all had conversations about this thing called power, right? Another abstract notion. You know, it's complicated. Who owns it? How do people define it? I think it's so easy to have that label of like power dynamics, you know, how does power play out? But also, who do we perceive to have power? I know there's been some chats, some comments, some great comments in the chat around, you know, this notion of governments wanting to be lean so they can create and think about the bigger picture, and wanting other actors to create the smaller picture and then make policy from that as well. So, you know, there are actually power dynamics that are invisible, that haven't been researched. And I know that's often come up in our conversation as well. So with that, I want to dive into this really, really kind of like even more deep into this notion of power. And I know that for us, and what Derek has touched on as well, is that our society is upheld by systems that require oppression benefiting the privileged few. And I think we've all touched on that. But what efforts to change these systems, and how is power stifling knowledge and wisdom and creation, but the leadership of those who are oppressed, who could truly create innovations for us. So, right, I'm going to start with Darshan. So what's no longer serving? So let's talk about this thing called power. What would you like to share about it? A deeper dive into it, so we can really start to the realities of how it plays out. But please do also feel free to share a bit about what other things you think aren't serving us well in the systems change, as systems change practitioners, and what's getting in the way.
Yeah, I think just going back to that thing of innovation, it's sort of like 3 people with post-it notes are more powerful than 3 people that have lived it and have the answer, right? I mean, it's much easier to put together and go, I'll come and run a workshop. And this idea that I can borrow knowledge all the time is really, really kind of, it's a weird thing where we've created a middle environment which says, here's the people that have the answers, here's the people that are stopping the answers from happening, and in the middle are people that are saying we're gonna make it happen, and we're gonna ignore everyone down here. And this just keeps happening. And that power structure doesn't just happen physically with this sort of thing, it also happens invisibly, right? So if you think things like data, so the credit system. I remember being an 18, 19-year-old who got an internship at a big company, and it was I needed the money. However, I remember I couldn't get a phone. my credit rating was really bad. I didn't even know what credit rating was. I couldn't get X, Y, and Z because of the credit rating I didn't have. So I had to continually speak to my manager and say, oh, could you pay for this and I'll pay you back. I had to talk to a friend's dad to be like, can you please set up a phone line for me on my mobile and I'll pay you instead of being on pay as you go. But that was inhibited. So if you take credit right now, it's sort of like you could be someone who's done nothing wrong, but the credit system will hold you back from progressing. That's invisible. But how do you deal with it? You can write a letter to Equifax and they may get back to you in 30 days. All right, okay, well, yeah, I don't have a printer. Oh no, but why don't you have a printer? Go to your local library to print. I don't have a local library. And so we're creating these structures which are someone somewhere at a big company thinks is innovation, but it's actually shutting people out even more. And then that creates inequality in itself. So if you take, government talks, someone said about government being lean, they go on about data all the time, but they don't use that data, right? So there's nothing in our system that says, for example, with the NHS, if someone falls ill, what's the impact on mental health and physical health on their family? There's no equations for that. We look at everyone as an individual, not as groups of people that are aligned. And so someone says, you know what, that medication, the cost benefit doesn't work out. But actually they never involved the family in the cost benefit. They didn't model that at all. Or you take local councils, for example, or government. They have data that will which will signal as a proxy when a human is going to be getting into trouble financially, mentally, etc. But they don't connect those dots together. All of it's going through a different department. And then they just kick the can down the road and say, do you know what, you're now homeless. No, it's a charity's problem. The charity says, hey, we're going to get you back on your own 2 feet. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle. So there are these hidden things. And then you think about, our forms of technology, the way our ads work online. They are able to manipulate people to the extent that, we talk about the education system, but actually a week on Facebook is enough to manipulate someone away from anything they've learned. I saw some research which showed in America, the anti-vaccination movement, all the misinformation was coming from 12 people. 12 people were able to do more than all the world scientists have been able to do to show you why vaccinations are important, right? 12 people. And you just think, how's that working? Well, guess what? We've created a system now that allows people who have the funds to say something and get it out there and disseminate that information and get it in front of people that they think are the most easy to manipulate. And yet none of our policymakers have caught up with this. We have systems where literally big tech companies are sort of saying, hey, we're not going to pay our tax. And then we have a media system that can't get their act together. So they will have the headline, big tech doesn't pay tax, instead of the nuance. And then the response will be, yeah, but they pay for wages and the wages pay the tax. Now, do you see how that narrative, how easy it is to dispel that entire thing very quickly? Because the way the media works. And for me, that one of the biggest hidden powers is time, right? We have this weird urgency for everything to be really, really quick. And yet that quick everything becomes slow, right? I'm just picturing now if Michelangelo was around and he'd have like 3 weeks to paint the Sistine chapel ceiling, and he'd have to write 14 funding updates. And then they'll be like, you can't buy paintbrushes because it's restricted funding. We didn't fund the paintbrushes. And he'd be like, what? So we don't give people the time to think and be thoughtful to say, do you know what? We have a problem and we need to solve that problem, but it's going to take time. But if we push energy towards it, it's going to happen. So, the hidden power takes away the time from you. The structures we have in place literally create hidden situations which you cannot control. And if you don't have any kind of network, there's no way you're going to deal with these things. And yet we're building on top of all of this.
Yeah.
We're first thing, if we could just do one thing is like sort out the credit rating system, sort out the banking system, sort that out. Like it's ludicrous. We know with the banking system, the way it works is you're always going to have people that are poor and people that are wealthy. You're always going to have it. The last year you talked about funding, Derek. It's not just the funders that have decided that they can change their rules because of the pressure on them to be like, why have you got millions sitting around? But central banks have gone, do you know what? Let's throw money at the system because we can't afford for the genie to be out the bottle. You know, and that's what they've done. And what have they done? By doing that, they've made Elon Musk the third richest man in the world, and he doesn't even make a profit. They've made Jeff Bezos the second richest man in the world, because you know what? He's got Amazon, but actually people, all that liquidity is going into things like stocks and housing, and the price of timber, what was it, 500% increase? I think it was 1500% increase at some point. So basically the people trying to solve the problem, like, let's just do this because we abide by these old rules. That causes everyone else problems. So now you've literally got people that can't afford food because of inflation.
But you know what, Dash, you know what's funny is that, like, wealth, and obviously philanthropy is wealth, right? So it's like there's such a huge arrogance to it that it wants to outlive nature, you know. And so I always find it funny that for example, we can go and spend money chasing an athlete from 2005 for doping to win a race, and we absolutely are not chasing those huge wealth accumulators for all of their extractive practices and all of the death and destruction that they've caused. There's no regulation to actually penalize the way that they've doped wealth in order to accumulate their wealth, right? There's nothing to regulate any of that, but they can mask it.
Right, they can mask it.
Doing good.
Right, here's the
so for me, it's like, to me, it's warped that, you know, you put people on the front page because they're trying to win a race, and often they're doing damage to themselves and all of that sort of stuff. And yet we have these millions and millions of pounds of wealth that's been accumulated, and a lot of that through philanthropy, where there's absolutely no conversation about where that wealth has come from, how extractive it's been, and how it's still potentially being invested in things that are actually more damaging than good that they're doing from the philanthropy. And the fact that they will also have more plans, longer term plans, for where that wealth is protected than they will for what they're going to do for doing good. You have 4-year strategies and 3-year strategies for doing good, with 50-year strategies about how you're going to preserve your wealth. That to me is crazy. But nothing that regulates that. And to me, that's not even hidden. That's like, you know, actually, if you're actually going to be brave enough to look into where your wealth is accumulated, then it's more likely that your regulatory body is going to come after you for doing that than they will be supporting you to try and change their own regulation. But anyway, sorry to cut you.
No, but you were on the right track, because football is a perfect example, right? Look how it's spun. It's the footballers that are rich. But if the footballers are rich, there's someone richer than the footballers. Yeah. But we don't talk about those people, because that's not the narrative, to be like, hold on, you know, Marcus Rashford has money because he's got a talent, but someone is definitely making more money than he's making. Why are you not outing them? And it's, for me, it's not this narrative. It's not about how rich you are. For me, it's not about that, but it gets framed as an envy, right? It gets framed as they did the work, they deserve the profit. You're like, no. A good example of it is Elon Musk doesn't do any work. All of his money's from literally credit, basically for green credits, right? He gets money from the government for the amount of cars he produces. They haven't made a profit, you know. And so you've got this weird situation where these sort of things are not talked about in education system or in the press, and so people can't understand it. And then no, you don't have an organizing force to deal with it. But you know where it does happen? Look what happened with the football a couple of months ago, right? You know, they were like, we're going to create a super league, and then suddenly all the fans were like, no, you're not. And then they all very quickly like, yeah, we're not. But you saw the power of people. There's more people than there are people at the top. And so that power is so fragile. And that's part of philanthropy, right? I need to show you that I'm doing something. But that doing something, no one goes, well, actually, you've done X over there that makes this even worse. And so why don't you just shut down X? I can't shut down X because I've got shareholders. All right. Well,
and Maria, please.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting, and I'm smiling because I recognise a lot of what Darshan and Derek are saying. I mean, ultimately, in the centre of this, I don't know if you remember Margaret Thatcher, and at one point she was in the House of Parliament and someone was basically criticising her, and she stood up and she just said, "You just all frit, yeah?" And that means frightened if you're from the north in England. And it strikes me that the reason why people don't want to give up power, even though they might have, they might be the best of philanthropists or think they are by giving money away, is because systems change is scary. We are asking for you to step away from the power, and we're asking for you to give back those resources, not give them, because actually those resources come from somewhere. And I'm really interested in how the communities that we work with, all of us and others in watching this and having conversations around the world, actually understand systems change better than most people, because of they're tackling it day in, day out, day in, day out. And it just strikes me that that's another reason why systems change hasn't been resourced in the same way that you would, for example, you talked about Amazon, etc., etc., because it means that people will not have the same power that they had before, and their position will be questioned. And that's across all sectors and all sort of whatever it is you do. And I think if there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I think there is, because you have to believe that, otherwise we just don't bother, we just switch off our iPads now, we forget this whole conversation. I think there's something in it that actually, and it's a shame in a way, but communities and the kind of knowledge equity that Baljeet's been talking about for so long since I've known her, has been right on top of this. The systems change, the shift that will be made are those in pain, because that's what we always have to do. We have to kind of talk about this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right for decades, until something bursts and we move one step forward. But I also think what's really interesting, and I'm watching it, is that the whole environment, society, good governance kind of work that's happening across some of the corporate sectors, certainly in the land space and the land ownership buildings place. And I'm hoping that some of that is absolutely real. But when you think about it at the board, I mean, I know there are people trying to make changes in these massive big institutions. And so what role do we have and other people to support them at the same time as criticize them to make that change? And the reason why I'm using land is because, most of the world, most of the reason why lots of people are wealthy is because of land ownership, big time, owning half of countries. The countries have gone into other countries and bought them, basically. And the reason why they just sit on the land, do nothing with it, and the reason why is because it has this kind of weird value, it just goes up and up by no one doing anything, despite poor communities not having access to their own land, which is something we heard earlier in the week. We had a conversation around climate and environmental justice and the real importance of indigenous understanding and knowledge, which was just amazing for centuries and centuries, that we're now talking about. But it just strikes me that if we're going to do systems change, and it's sometimes quite annoying, and it's how long do we have to sympathise for? So there's something about being kind, but at the same time being bold and being willing to walk to the table, but then walk away from it after a while when it's just not happening. Because I think what's happening to all of us and the local communities that we work with and those organisations that are trying to create systems change, I mean really trying to create systems change in the way that we understand it, are tired. And I think there's only so much you can do at a table before you have to walk away, close that door and actually work together again. It just seems to be always the people who are most impacted by inequality who are having to make that change. And I think what will happen when we know success has happened, and I suspect we're always going to have to fight for this, because as soon as we stop, something else comes up. I think when we know that's happened, it will be around a different model of economy. So it won't be just valued around land and various other things and minute percentage of people owning this stuff. But it will be around a different way of understanding who we are as humans, and that might sound a bit woo-woo, but I don't think it is actually, because we aren't the rulers of this planet. We're not the rulers of the land, and we're not the rulers of the rules, actually, as we've seen from storms and loss of land and destructive burning downs of forests and deeply distressing stuff. But I think ultimately, if we don't get it right in systems change, the planet will. The planet will. And I think what we need to do now is just understand, what are the activation points that we need to bring in and support as far as we can in a way that's healthy for ourselves and our communities to make those systems change. Is it relationships? Is it equitable environment? Is it the way we design things? Is it how we understand the public realm? Is it around how inclusive we are? Is it about how we give away, or better still, I mean, Derek, your work on philanthropy is just amazing. You know, if we followed the kind of thinking that you've been giving and leading on, this would be a different space. You know, it wouldn't be about people deciding what they're going to give away just for tax reasons. It would be a deep understanding and connection to the fact they shouldn't own that much. And that has come from somewhere, not necessarily from their family that went on hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It's come from somewhere. So I'm just really interested in all of those things. What are the red pins? What are the things? What are the activation points to make sure systems change happens? And what are the activation points for all of us as individuals and communities to go, right, we're going to walk away and do something different?
Maria, I really love. No, and Maria, what's so beautiful about that is that, you know, it's that connectedness. You know, we're talking about interconnected systems. What about us as people together? You know, this individualistic world of the I, where lots of communities work in the we. You know, and the incredible knowledge from indigenous knowledge that was shared earlier this week, but is incredible work happening around the world. These notions of circular economy and understanding our role with each other, but also our planet. But I think that what you've just touched on is so important. Is it's about leaning into our humanity, who we are as people, you know, and how are we leading, you know, and how are we supporting understanding of leadership? I mean, you know, mental health and suicide rates of C-suite CEOs is as equally as challenging everywhere else. How are we becoming so isolated in the way that we are trying to do our work? So that, thank you for putting that in the space, is that we can often, especially those coming new to the space, and especially those, you know, who are studying systems change or becoming systems thinkers and new, and especially the students who are, you know, and don't have the kind of life experience of years of us all, is that, you know, it is about yourself in all of this, and how do we show up, how do we back out, how do we protect ourselves and heal? So thank you so much for centering that. And Derek, there was just this beautiful, like the comments are just incredible, and this notion of power. So, but arguably, and that's what I'm saying, the point Maria made around critique, actually there's great human beings who don't have lived experience, right, in so many places, who want to come together to actually do work together meaningfully. Equitably, I don't know. Yeah, I think we're still on a trajectory, but definitely meaningfully come together, different systems actors. So this notion of sharing power, shifting power, all of this is coming up, and often sadly can be a hashtag that everyone follows. What does that all mean? And especially in this moment where people do care about racial injustice, people do want to address, it's everyone's talking about in social innovation and systems change around understanding the intersectionality of racial injustice with other injustice areas. And I think someone put, there was a Toni Morrison quote in there, if anyone can help me, which I missed, where it said, yeah, like Toni Morrison said, the very serious function of racism is distraction. Yeah. And that was someone who put that in the chat. But I just wanted you to share a little bit on your thoughts around that, and how race and racism is coming into this debate as well around power.
I mean, I come down to this. So the reason I work in philanthropy a lot of the time is because it's independent money, and it has serious power and potential to catalyze really serious change, you know. So everything that I talk about, much as it burns me, it's worth it, because if you're talking about part of the system that, if it operates better, could be truly catalytic for change, then I do think if, and this is to Maria's point, if money is catalyzed in a particular way, a bit more strategically, power reversed, etc., then you've got a real opportunity for that to change. And I've seen some of that in pockets. So we saw that with resourcing racial justice last year, which was funded by 30 Percy and also raised 50% of that money through crowdfunding. But you're talking about, you know, people of color, activists and artists who were in charge of running that program, made all of the decisions of that program. It enabled them to distribute money, but for the people that were applying for money to see themselves across the table or across the Zoom link, which doesn't happen in all of the charity sector. You know, so you had that. You've had the Edge Fund for years who have been doing participatory grant making, but it's not participatory grant making in the traditional sense of, okay, you have actors coming in and making decisions, but actually a decision is being made above you, you know, and the checks are being signed. No, their members make those decisions. And if you look at their track record, you know, funding Ubele and Black Lives Matter UK and Sisters Uncut, these were three of the major organizations that have led a lot of the protests, a lot of the mobilizations in the community over the last 12 months. And those organizations got their early stage funding from the Edge Fund. You know, you've got Imi's work in Birmingham, where she did the Dream Fund, which was just enabling, you know, people in communities who don't have the time, the resource, the information, etc., giving them money to really just recognize their dreams and enable their imaginations to flourish in a way that there's not much money for doing that. You know, I can go on and on and on. You know, Yvonne Field and Shane Ryan and the work that they did on the Phoenix Fund and how they mobilized communities across the UK. And, you know, Amara Spence's work when she did the Freedom Fund for Black artists and stuff. These were all things that had beautiful characteristics of power reversal, so there wasn't the power dynamics. You're talking about ideas creators being the ideas selectors, which is one of the big absences which you have in the philanthropic world. You're talking about the imagination being funded and not pain, or not just pain. You're talking about trust. You're talking about reaching non-constituted groups and individuals. You're talking about creative and creative practices, not harmful and extractive practices. You're talking about people that are not afraid of the self-determination of communities. You're talking about all of these ingredients from all of these wonderful innovations. And you want to know what the tragedy is that these are brilliant people, but in total, they have probably given away about 3, maybe 4 million pounds in the last decade with this work, with this wonderful practice. The top 300 trusts and foundations in this country give away 3 billion a year. So what if you were to take all of those wonderful organizations, okay, and this is just really simple, and say, as a funder, you know what, let's give some, we can't do this. And you have to be humble enough to say that we can't do this. We can't reach those communities. How about giving those organizations, those people, right? It ain't hard, because most of the trusts and foundations give away less than 5% of the money that they're worth. So it's not like, yo, the money's not there. I'm just saying, if you have these proven organizations that are able to reach communities in the way that you can't, what is the barrier that stops you from collectively putting and plowing your money into those organizations over the next 20 years to be able, and more, to be able to distribute money? And I don't see a barrier to that. I don't see,
Derek,
I know there's barriers, and people will tell me that there's barriers. Yeah. But if you look at the track record of those organizations, I'm just saying, if you want to do one thing simply, that is one thing you can do simply.
Derek, what I love about, and thank you so much for, you know, the elevation and centering and also honouring of leaders, because that's the, you know, of incredible change makers who often get erased, who where, especially in our research modalities, our design modalities, we extract information, extract knowledge, and then we repackage it, and it happens time and time again, and we erase the history of those knowledge producers. But what I think was important about it, and that's why the crediting and honouring of so many incredible, largely women of colour as well in the UK. But I think just to give all of our audience, you know, because I think the whole social good, you know, kind of the ecosystem can make us feel like we're othered and divided. So incredible people in the systems change, social innovation field, now wanting to understand social movements, wanting to research social movements, movements of movements, to find out what they do, without necessarily understanding the sophisticated nature of the knowledge that is being operating and being created. And a lot of the funds that Derek has just mentioned, this othering of racial justice as though they were nice little funds that were created, fundamentally shifted the design of investment in the UK, so much so that funders are starting to realize that these models of design for investment funds should now also be applied to other marginalized or oppressed communities, because they were designed in a new way. Not just it was people who were bringing understanding of their pain and their inequities. They fundamentally designed new ways and disrupted new funding models. And so I really thank you for kind of surfacing that, because I think often really, you know, our colleagues in kind of working in tech innovation or working in kind of other spaces may feel, or political sciences may feel, and disciplines feel so disconnected to kind of the social movement activism. But actually we're talking about knowledge producers coming together to fundamentally innovate and reimagine and redesign. So I also love the fact, I can't believe the time is just going so quick, as it always beautifully does with us, and I love the fact that you started to elevate, you know, some incredible folk here in the UK as well, Derek, is that systems change, can it happen? So let's turn to the final bit before, and if anyone, and the knowledge exchange, I mean, incredible comments. I'm getting distracted, but if you've got any questions coming through, because we are finishing at 6, please do post some questions that we can pose to the incredible panelists. But what I wanted to also now turn to you, Maria, as well, is this whole systems can be disrupted, interventions can be made, we can reimagine, we can innovate, we can, you know, we do technically, and a lot of, I know the communities and leaders we worked with is like, we're constantly in resistance mode, but we can be in liberation mode, because the world and the planet and our people do have in abundance, right? And if we focused on that, what's the liberation work? So how can we reimagine the new? So any examples or inspirations, Maria, you could also share of work happening out there where we are reimagining systems, or there are great examples of great systems interventions?
I think where we reimagine best is when we don't think in a siloed approach. So I'm trying to follow, I mean, Darshan's work and Derek's, and feeding that amazing knowledge into the work that I do at the Foundation of Future London. I guess one of the things that, starting kind of afresh slightly, is trying to think about how that works in regards to, as you said, the self-determination, and not feeling that, you know, it's our money. How much do you want? Actually, you want £10? I'll give you 50p. So I think what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do with colleagues, is to illustrate that systems change, and not just be on a panel with amazing people. And it's, you know, with the best will in the world, and whoever you're working with, even if internally an organisation or a community goes, of course it's what we have to do. You have to deal with other people who do not get it and are still scared, or think they get it and actually don't. And I think sometimes that's worse, is those that people talk about systems change, and actually it's about systems saying, you know, it's not really, they use the term, but it's systems the same. And I think the examples in regards to some things around placemaking are, I'm just bear with me while I look at my screen, because I don't want to forget the name of one particular organisation that I think have been doing some amazing work around placemaking. So for example, and this was actually flagged up to me, and I recall their work from Baljeet, and that's Southall and Hayes Clean Air. .org.uk if you want to follow them. And you know, this is an example about people expect you know, someone to be talking about, who's talking about climate change, to be middle class and understand all the ethics and but actually a lot of climate change movements, placemaking movements, land ownership movements have been from the ground up, and they come with knowledge equity. They know how to make a system better. And so we need to do more of that listening. And I think what's also crucial, again, if I look at sort of the day job and focusing on public realm and creativity, I think it's talking about system change with different storylines and realizing people learn in different ways. And so earlier on, actually before this started, Darshan was talking about a colleague with that brilliant painting behind him. And who didn't realize she was autistic, and clearly is. And I just think, you know, it's not about degrees, and at the moment it is, as to which doors open for you. It's about the knowledge and understanding that you have, and it's been able to tell a small child, listen, whatever you're good at is important in the world. If it's art, if it's rethinking what a house looks like, if it's actually been a really good footballer, they have to find a way, we have to find a way as a human race, because the planet will find it for us and just disappear, all of us, is that actually this is about rethinking all those different skills that we have as humans and recognizing there is absolute worth in absolutely everything. And that's how we make systems change. And we try and bring people along with us. But my mum used to use this word about laggards. And sometimes people will be behind and they won't always be able to catch up. And whilst we keep a hand behind us to hold it, but should always be moving forward. Always be moving forward in regards to, is this a change for the better? No, it's not. How do we make it different? Next step. And also constantly looking back, otherwise systems change just becomes traditional like everything else. So we should always be looping in, is this really systems change? Is this really making a difference, or is this another title? Now, I know that you're not going to let that happen, Baljeet, but we just have to constantly, as a universe, think about that.
No, Maria, God, it's, some of this stuff is just like common sense, right? We all as humans, would just get this, but what's getting in the way? And just, and so grateful for you to unpacking that, Maria. But I think this point about, all the different talents and experiences and interests and and also the notion of dreams that we've talked about, and imagination, igniting in imagination as well, is around, even when we're thinking about really hard social inequities and injustices in society, and then we want to even work with the community. So even those who don't have lived experience want to actually work with communities, that dial shift of understanding from that participation model. And yes, there's been some good intermediaries who have become kind of participatory, say, grant making models, but unfortunately a lot of intermediaries are still using terms like, and language can often just say a lot about where we are, is about giving voice to communities. Well, communities have been shouting loud and proud, actually, what's happening to the listeners. And yet a lot of, say, middle class, well-intentioned, well-meaning designers, think tanks, researchers, wanting to help, but not necessarily understanding the talent and the beauty of the wisdom. And this is what it's about. We need all forms of human wisdom. And if we don't start seeing lived experience as a form of insight and knowledge that also needs to be given agency. But communities are not just the protesters, right? We're not just shouting out. The mediums for change that people with lived experience are using, you all, us, all of us, the thousands of practitioners we now have a movement of, are using like their lived experience, but so many varied mediums for change. Innovators, designers, policy strategists, lawyers, who also have direct first-hand experience of the issues they're tackling. So that kind of bias we have of the vulnerable identity of those who are suffering pain, our obsession with thinking that the brand or a story or misery memoirs will ignite empathy in that one savior who will want to help, because that is the branding culture we have of telling the story. That empathy doesn't create change, folks. I'm sorry to say that. It creates just an effort of collective good humans coming together with different levels of talent, expertise, technical as well. This fear and confrontation that people feel othered, that, my knowledge isn't valued anymore because we don't have lived experience. Not at all. This is to address the pervasive imbalance of who we recognise as knowledge producers and how we can come together. And I know we've got one question, so I'll come to that shortly. But Darshan, like Maria and Derek have started to elevate and just kind of give examples of disruption, but reimagination and some work happening out there. Over to you, Darshan. Let's celebrate and elevate some great work happening out there.
Definitely. I think it comes down to that. Just to quick on the thing about philanthropy and giving, it's that word giving, right? So remember when I'm working with resourcing racial justice, they kept using the word investment. It's investment. And that's a human priority of like, what do I want to invest in to see happen? Whereas giving is, here's some change. And ironically, you don't get any change because of that. So there's this thing of like, Super Being Labs, the whole idea was like, everyone is born this amazing child. And you don't say to a child, oh, your dream is weird. Like that thing you're imagining is weird. You nourish them and you kind of go, well, let's play along with this and let's see how you can dream a bit bigger, etc. But we kind of, it's much easier to fund a anti-knife crime program than it is to fund, let's say, a program that says, an arts program that says there are 20 incredible artists living in this area. We're going to fund all of them to break out and be known by everyone. It's much easier to say, do you know what? It's a knife crime program that's going to prevent them from committing knife crime. You're like, committing knife crime? None of these people have committed knife. What do you mean? But they could. So let's fund that. And so you have to spin it to the thing of like this idea that people can dream and people do dream and it is possible. And some, we talked about the invisible power of tech. In America, an incredible activist called Nandini Jami, she created Sleeping Giants, which is just incredible. And she's now created Check My Ads with Claire Atkin, her co-founder. And what she's realized is that actually, a lot of the hate in the world, here's a stat that is an example. Facebook found through its own research that 64% of people who join its hate groups are recommended to do so by Facebook's own algorithm. So someone can wake up one day and not hate anyone and then see something that they like, and then before they know it, they're getting hounded with join this group. Before you know it, you hate people. So it's this fear and greed thing, right? But she sort of understood that our ad mechanism and the way we disseminate information is actually fueling hate and division. So what she's now doing is, through her work and through the tech, is found a way to say, do you know what? Brand X doesn't want to be funding fueling hate and whatever. All they want to do is get their work out to the right people. So with her thing, she's giving them a way of checking whether their ads are funding hate or not, so they can shut it down. And she's done some incredible work in stopping right-wing extremists from basically being funded because of the ad, people advertising on their blog or on their YouTube channel and that sort of thing. And so it is possible that there's always going to be people dreaming. We just have to believe in them and stop asking so many questions of, are you sure that works? Yeah. Because guess what? Nandini's doing it. And in the UK, you've got organizations like Foxglove Legal, who are Corey and Martha, who are actively taking the government on. And so there's two forms of systems change. There's the imagination space, and then there's the breaking the power that's bad space. And we have to believe in both those spaces and the people within it that have got the energy and do something with it. But we've got to remember something. All of these people understand that their work is an investment into something better. And that means that they won't sleep. They'll keep at it. Mm-hmm. We cannot take that for granted. I wish someone would fund us with a project to see how many social change agents have broken down, have burnt out and left. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's, if we want every kid to grow up and say, do you know what, this is my problem. I do want things to be better for people. And equity means that person getting something does not mean that I get any less. If we can create that thinking, then we have to also handhold people that are fighting and say, look, are you okay? How can I help you? Where are the funders saying to change agents saying, do you know what, we're going to pay off all your debt? No one's doing that, right? And so someone's stressed out and not sleeping. Do you think they're performing 100%? Imagine if some of these prolific people were performing 100%. They're already doing more than most people are doing an entire lifetime. Just imagine what could happen. So I think we have to cotton on that because of tech, hidden power is more pervasive. But there are people like Nandini who are doing stuff about it and actively off their own back, making this work. We just have to listen and back them and not ask them to prove themselves. Believe in them.
And Darshan, thank you so much for that, because it's really like looking at, but I'm just, what I was thinking of, why I was smiling was that, every single day, at least 10, 15, 20 leaders with direct lived experience who are also innovative designers come to our doors. Yeah, this week I was talking to, who's come to mind is like, Harvey Kennedy Pitt, who is a health practitioner, who is gay, who is Black, who has created Black Beetle Health, that works with Black and LGBTQA health practitioners and students to come together to provide services, designing, education, programming to address the inequities in health and race injustice for the LGBTQ community. This is what we're talking about, folks. So, you know, it is possible. And how much did he get funding in his start of year? £1,000. You know, and despite the impact, and these are health practitioners, qualified health practitioners with lived experience of racial injustice and from an LGBTQIA community. I mean, we're talking, that is a flavoursome kind of package of expertise here. And so we have one final question. I think I can see one question that we have here, which I think is kind of answered from Farah. What are we seeing with extraction of insights, perspectives, ideas, which are then packaged up and regurgitated, but now owned by funders in professionalized language? What's the solution to stopping that? And will we ever be able to prevent it? And then I will just turn to the last question. As an elected local councillor, I am loving the passionate humanity in this session. The inquiry about inherited definitions is interesting. What happens to citizens in terms of power and democracy when we are labelled as customers within the system? So they're the two questions, and I wanted to pose to you. So who wants to reply to some of those?
I think the first question about when will it ever end kind of question is probably never. And I wish I could say something more positive. I think there will be dips and troughs, as you see through history. There will be people who get behind us until it doesn't work for them, and then we'll dip again. And I think the thing is, in this conversation around systems change and knowledge equity, it is really about staying well as an individual and looking around to make sure that those around you are staying well. Because it takes a lot to do this work, and it takes a lot to create difference. And I think when we put it out there, we're sharing it. And unfortunately, we're always going to have people that misconstrue, sometimes purposely, or misconstrue. They don't mean to, but they do, and it causes problems. I thought about this so many times, about how do you stop that happening? And I just come to the conclusion that they don't. But what we can do is you know, it's a bit like this tennis game, isn't it? Back and forth. So they misconstrue, you pass it back and go, you got that slightly wrong, but I think I know what you're trying to do, but this is what it is. And then what I found with knowledge equity and the kind of work that you do, Baljeet, and everyone on in this conversation, is that you kind of move forward. You kind of have the next iteration, and you move on anyway from the thing that someone's copied, because you're constantly innovating something new. So people that come to steal purposely and then misconstrue often don't get it anyway. And they're way behind the movement that's moving forward and creating those different changes. It nonetheless isn't making any less irritating or deeply upsetting when they get it wrong, because it can cause all sorts of schisms in the system. And it's not the kind of systems change that we want when it's just copying and you don't recognise the value and the time and the people that have put that knowledge onto the table for free, hoping you'll do something good with it.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. And I just can't believe where the time's gone, and the questions are like zooming into our chat, which is very different from yours. I have to shoot off to a reimagination and imagination infrastructure event in a couple of minutes, but I do want to say some thank yous. But our panelists are also happy to stay on stay on afterwards as well, to share, to even answer some of the questions. So thank you for that. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you all. You know, on behalf of not only the Centre for Knowledge Equity and the Skoll Centre, but not only being part of this panel, but being absolutely instrumental. And not only our inaugural Knowledge Equity Fellows, but integral to the co-design and the delivery of Systems Weeks, with so many of our collaborators and leaders and community being part of the week, and the powerful wisdom that you bring. And also the work that you have done to support the Lived Experience Leaders movement. Now what I want to do is hand over to our incredible live scriber, Zahura, to share her screen and share what she has created with us.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Great.
So here is the picture that I drew. It was an amazing conversation. So, blackbirds being very noisy, sorry. So it was an incredible conversation. So I've got some notes on here, but some of the things that really stood out to me was over here in the top left-hand corner. this idea of the system kind of pushing in one way and incredible, amazing people trying desperately to run against it like an escalator, and the ideas of burnout and things like that. So I'm going to kind of elaborate on that later on. And then there's a really interesting thing about genuine innovation and philanthropy. That philanthropists only are spotting it through a frame that they recognise. So that's down here on towards the left on the side. And then the centerpiece of the thing is this kind of crossover between what I heard the four key areas of design, research, government, and philanthropy, and how there can be like space for social reset, that they kind of all need to be remade or re-examined or reimagined, kind of like in overlapping ways. So that's the kind of centerpiece of the whole thing. There was lots of amazing stuff from Derek on philanthropy, and I loved the idea of doping sports and doping as well. It was a metaphor that really worked for me. And then there's two lovely echoes of each other about stepping away from power if you've got it, and examining your ego and where you're coming from, and then protecting yourself if you're somebody who doesn't have so much power, and actually being prepared to step away from the table of the powerful in some ways. So I'm going to rework those in a bit with a bit more detail and not six figures later. There was also a wonderful thing from Darshan, which was these hidden structures, and it was just so rich and real. Yes, from credit card to like medication to printers to phones and time. And then I also love the idea of Michelangelo. I've got these paintbrushes in the Michelangelo thing there. Not having the funding just for his paintbrushes. I got some actual names of some organisations on this that wanted to really name check those, but I didn't get all of them, so I'll get some more from you afterwards, because that's kind of stuff I can't do so much well live. And then this idea of ideas created and ideas selection, just copying and it's being given away, and this value, this richness being given away. So I'm going to add a little bit more here in this corner about and these mediators, the people with post-it notes being mediated, was a very strong one for me as well, because we resonate, because I've been people with post-it notes mediating. But I'm going to draw some more post-it notes and stuff down there, and then a little bit of things in the bottom, which I am also going to kind of elaborate on a little bit. But yeah, it was an incredible conversation. So thank you so much. It was a real honour to do it.
Oh, Sahura, that is absolutely amazing. You never cease to amaze me with that absolute creativity, but it's just so real and bringing it to life. Thank you so much. And I can't believe how quick the time has come over and the flurry of questions that were coming in. But I know that I'm being advised that we do have to end, and we can't continue with the questions, and I wish we could. So no, thank you so much for everyone with the engagement. But first of all, I think, thank you, all of you. I mean, I was constantly looking at the comments of just incredible comments being made, and thoughts and reflections. And so folks, as humans, we do have beauty, creativity, as we've seen from Zohra's work as well, ingenuity, wisdom to walk into a more just and fair, equitable future for all, with equitable systems that can work for the majority and not simply the privileged few. A future that can only be achieved once we all step back, understand who we are in the world, what our role is, lean into our humanity, explore the vital role we can play in the ecosystem that we all inhabit, and the ecosystems we then may go on to inhabit, and appreciate how we are all interdependent and interconnected. So celebrate that we can all achieve something really great together if we provide equitable and meaningful agency to all of our people, and actually value all different forms of knowledge. And until we start to acknowledge and value that, then we can start to craft new ways of being and doing together. And I truly believe together we can do it. And if you haven't already seen an incredible film of incredible leaders activating their lived, learned, practice expertise or new innovations for the future was shared, please do take a look. We can build and imagine the future with equity at its heart, evolved by emerging and growing and ever-changing knowledge from our collective spaces, places and disciplines. Thank you so much, Zahura, and of course, as ever, incredible Knowledge Equity Fellows, and most of all of the audience and all of you who participated in this knowledge exchange, and from zooming in from all over the world. What an incredible way to end our last fair share and panel event. I feel very blessed and honoured to be part of this growing community. And how do we address all this? Let's all become knowledge equity activists. Activism is a way of being and doing. Let's all take it to our work and everything we do, whatever space we inhabit. Systems Week will culminate tomorrow with Map the System, a 2021 global final where students from around the world have been exploring how they can address social, economic and environmental issues that matter to them. So that will be live streamed. Please do feel free to join that tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be some details that will be shared with everyone. And that for me, folks, is thank you. I appreciate you all, and what a blessing to be part of this incredible community.